For a lot of people in the world, throwing a big swim bait is a way of life. They think nothing about it. Once they get that first bite on it, that's all they want to do. And Shimano has introduced another offering for those who are absolute fanatics of throwing big swim baits. A year ago, Shimano introduced the Armajoint 190 SF, a floating swim bait that was 7.5 inches long, weighed 1 7/8 ounces, and had some incredible features. Well, they've added to that lineup with the 190 SS, a slow sinking version. So now you can get down to those murky depths when you've got a suspended fish on a tree or a ledge fish, you can now get this bait down there. The features are just like the original Armajoint 190, but with the SS, we can walk right through all of them for you. The first feature to talk about would be the joint in this bait. It's the Armaboost technology. Armaboost is basically where the bait will fold into this shape for casting. It increases your casting distance dramatically. One of the big downfalls of big swim baits tends to be the end-over-end roll that happens because they are held straight. Well, this one has a super magnet right in the middle section that grabs those metal bars. So when you go to cast it, it folds over just like this. But once it hits the water, the magnet re-engages and it allows that bait to have that natural S-bend swimming action. Another feature with this one that has made Shimano's lures super popular is Flashboost technology. And Flashboost is a mirror foil suspended on micro springs in the clear forward section of this bait. This really helps add a lifelike appeal to the lure. In clear water situations, when you're working this lure and you kill it, you're still gonna have that flickering of that mirror driving them to strike. You even get an additional pitch hologram called Scale Boost that adds a lifelike look and appeal and attraction. When the light hits these scale patterns on the bait, it actually has that pitch hologram effect where it changes color. Now, the Armajoint 190 SS is available in 5 different colors that cover the most popular bait fish colors, no matter where you are in the country. The other things that we can talk about this bait is its dimensions, like I mentioned. 7.5 inches in length, and this one weighs 2 ounces when compared to the 190 SF that weighed in at 1 7/8, allowing it to be that slow sink model. The tails are removable on these and they're soft rubber, and they actually come with an extra tail in the package as well. The other thing I really love about these baits is the hook keeper system. So if you look up underneath, there's actually a keeper that you snap your hooks in to keep them tight to the body. When you have your hooks in here, as soon as you get bit, that hook will pop down and it'll help the fish not use the weight of the bait as leverage. It's a very simple system that both the front and back hooks have a little keeper that you just basically take the hook and press it up into the keeper and it'll hold it in place. That keeps those hooks tighter to the body, so when you're working that bait over the tops of weeds or trees, you don't have this free swinging hook that's wiling around, scratching the side of the paint off the bait or hooking unwanted cover. It's a very good system. Another thing you'll notice right away, there's a lot of noise that comes out of this. So when this swim bait is tracking in the water, you hear choke, 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 choke. It's a great way to call fish in from long distances because the Armajoint 190 SS has those rattles and those weights in the belly of the bait. Now, when it comes to picking a combo to throw a big bait like this, it is critical to get it right. One thing that happens for a lot of people is they undergun their combos, and that's gonna affect a couple things. It's gonna affect your casting accuracy, your casting distance, but more importantly, hooking fish and landing them. What I'm throwing with this Armajoint 190 SS is a 7'9" Zodius Extra Heavy. This is a swim and big bait rod designed specifically for baits like the 190 SS. This rod is rated to throw baits up to 5 ounces, so throwing a 2-ounce bait doesn't overstress this rod. It allows me to load it up with lots of power and get this bait out and use that Armaboost technology to launch that bait as far as possible. The other thing about this rod, it's rated for 14 to 30-pound test. That is one of the most important things that a lot of people forget about when choosing a combo. They forget to match the weight or size of the bait with the actual combo, the rod's ratings. These little ratings that come on the rod are a lifeline to making you have a combo that performs to the maximum ability of the combo. We're using 20-pound test with this setup, but some people will throw 25 or even 30, and that is a great rod that can do that up to 30 pounds, and it can throw a 5-ounce bait. So this is a rod is kind of a do-all rod. We talk about using fluorocarbon on this. Now I'm using 20-pound fluorocarbon, 100% fluorocarbon. The reason I want fluorocarbon is because fluorocarbon gives me a couple of things. It has the same light refraction index as water, which means it is invisible underwater, so I can get away with a thicker fluorocarbon without any problems. The other thing is it's denser than water, so it sinks. So it's going to naturally help keep my bait in that strike zone longer. It is something that you should definitely consider, whether it's 20, 25, or 30-pound test. It all depends on how much casting distance you want, because the lighter the line, the thinner the diameter, the more casting distance you will get. Or if you're fishing around super heavy cover, you may want to jump up in pound test to make sure you have enough power to bring that fish to the boat. For a reel, torque is a necessity when it comes to throwing big baits and dragging big fish to the boat. I've chosen a Tranx 300. Now the Tranx 300 regular gear, I have actually changed the paddle handle to a single handle on it, and that gives me a lot of movement with that bait and a lot of ease of cranking in this bait, so that if I want to do a fast downstroke, I can get the bait to dance a little bit more. Now casting this thing, one thing you want to realize when you're using a combo like this is it's a two-hand casting combo, but also the braking. Because a Tranx 300 will hold so much 20-pound test fluorocarbon, it's really going to add a lot of weight. People don't understand the fact that fluorocarbon is very dense. There's a reason it sinks in water. It's dense and it's heavy. And when you spool up over 200 yards of 20-pound test or 250 yards of 20-pound test onto a reel, it adds mass and kinetic energy to that reel when you're casting. So I always tell people, when you're throwing big baits with a big reel and lots of fluorocarbon, tighten your casting spool tension knob and adjust your braking accordingly, because the mass of the bait plus the mass of the spool spinning with all that fluorocarbon is really going to make casting easier. You don't need to have things loose. Casting this bait, you can see right away when I bomb it out there, the Armajoint works flawlessly. But for casting technique, I'm going to use a two-handed cast. So I'm actually going to turn and grab the back hand of the rod, which has that monocoque handle. I'm going to grab that here so that I've got two hands on it. So when I load this up, I can bomb that bait. It just landed right now. I can bomb that bait out there, and then I can also count it down. From what I've seen, and it depends on water temperature, the sink rate of this bait is going to be around 2 feet every couple seconds, so a foot per second, maybe a little less, but if the water's colder, traditionally the density is lower, and then if it's warmer, it's going to be more buoyant, but it will always sink just at different rates, so just keep an eye on it. The way I do it is I throw it out there in front of my live sonar, and I count it down to see how many seconds it takes to get to specific depths. Once the bait is out there, what I like to do when I fish it is I like to point my rod kind of at it, just off kilter, so that if I get a bite, I've got a little bit of give towards the fish, and then you can get a slow, steady retrieve. You can do little twitches like this. And one of the things I love about this bait is that if you're winding it in and you see something following it, if you crank and push forward with the rod combo, the slack line will allow the bait to turn around and look at the fish. That's a great way to get a fish to trigger a strike. Working the bait, again, is all up to cadence. You have to figure out what the fish want. The natural S-bend swimming motion can be done as slowly as you want it or as fast as you want it. This bait does not break character at all. I can burn it right along the surface, so if I wanted to take this for big stripers inland or big aggressive bass, or maybe try to convince a giant smallmouth on the St. Lawrence River to commit to it, I can burn this bait and it swims at that perfect just under the surface wake, and then I can kill it and let it fall. It's an unbelievably versatile bait. So whether you're working this thing slow with a slow gear ratio or you're trying to burn it in, you can make this bait do anything you want. A fish, some days, some hours, will want a very fast moving bait. Some days they want a slow moving bait. Some days they want a bait that falls. Some days they want a bait that gets twitched twice. The cadence is the way you move that bait. And what I try to teach people is when you're using a bait, whether it's a 190 SS or any other bait, throw it out there, do a certain retrieve. Throw it out there again, add one variable into your retrieve. Keep changing your retrieve over and over and over again, and pay attention to when you get bit, because every bite is a clue. Every time you get a bite, it tells you something about the mood of the fish. And not every day is the same. Whether it's a wind shift, a sun to cloud shift, water temperature, barometric pressure, moon phases, And you have to be smart enough to realize that little changes in the way you move that bait are gonna help you get more bites. And when you see that and you start building that pattern, it becomes easier and easier to be successful with a bait like the 190 SS.